What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to RPO Radio, the show where we react and run through everything that's happening across the football world. I'm your host, Hunter, and our co partner, Turner. And today, oh man, we've got a championship game to unpack. Indiana versus Miami, a game that has had everything drama, defense, big plays, heartbreak, and a whole lot of controversy. So buckle up because we're going to be diving into some missed calls, Nick Saban calling out officials, and Miami's missed opportunities, Indiana's clutch fourth down magic, and everything swirling around the football universe right now. Let's start with the elephant in the room, the officiating, because if you watched that game yesterday, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There were multiple missed calls that had fans and honestly even neutral viewers that even don't even know much about the game scratching their heads, holding calls that mysteriously disappeared, a questionable spot on a third down, and that late no call, what looked like a clear defensive contact or targeting on Fernando Mendoza caused him to bloody his lip. It all added up at the end of the game. It wasn't even just fans complaining. Nick Saban himself, a guy who usually chooses his words carefully when it comes to officials, came out and criticized the crew. When Saban speaks on officiating, people listen. He basically said the game lacked consistency and that the officials failed to maintain control in key moments. Now, I'm not saying the refs decided the game, but I am saying this. In a championship setting, you do expect the best crews to come out and have the cleanest execution and the fewest controversies. Yesterday, we didn't get that too much, and I feel like through most of the college football playoff, we haven't gotten that. But here's where I'm going to keep it real. Because I've said this before and I'm sticking to it. Miami did not capitalize on special teams, period. You can blame the refs all day, but when you leave points on the field, missed field goals, shaky punt coverage, poor returns, that stuff comes back to haunt you. And it did. They could have tied the game up with that field goal, but they missed it. Miami had chances to flip momentum, steal possessions, and tilt the field, and they didn't. Championship games punish that kind of sloppiness. And then there's Carson Beck. Look for the Looking for the most of the game. He was balling, making smart reads, staying composed, delivering accurate throws. He looked like the guy Miami needed in that situation until the very last play. That interception was brutal, and you could just feel the disappointment in the stadium from all the Miami fans. One mistake doesn't define a quarterback, but in a championship, it can define the whole game. But let's give Indiana credit where it's due, because they earned that win. Their fourth down success was unreal. Every time they lined up for one of those gutsy calls, they executed like a team that had rehearsed those moments 1,000 times. That's coaching. That's preparation. That's confidence. And their defense, they were locked in from the opening whistle. They didn't just bend and don't break. They dictated that game and pressured Beck and clogged the running lanes and tackled in space. They forced Miami into uncomfortable situations all night. You could tell Indiana came in with a plan, and they stuck to it. And that's what championship teams do. Turner, what do you think about the game?
Think it was an overall a pretty good natty to look at overall. One of the closest natties we've had in a really long time. It's actually the recent. Now I've looked at the stats. The it's actually the first one score natty since 2016. So
Wow.
that just tells you how dominant teams have been and how good of a game this was to watch, except for the penalization, of course, as you said, with the fouls. But exactly what you said with special teams, of course, Miami let Indiana block that punt. And if you go back, if Indiana had no block punt, there's no natty for them. It's exactly what you said. They have to be consistent on all sides of the ball, and they weren't. And due to that, it's going to cost some big plays, and ultimately those big plays cost them the national championship. And I mean, give credit to Miami though; they did play fantastic towards the first. I would say like the first to second and third quarter. But again, you could start to see that fourth quarter. I feel like although they were doing good on that last drive, I feel like they were hustling to the point that it became sloppy and inconsistent. Because I felt like each play was like, oh, where's it going? Where's it going? Because you have no idea. And so I feel like Carson Beck felt the same way. He's like, what do I do? You know what I mean? It's going so fast that it almost becomes sloppy. And to the point where I'm like, I understand you have no first down. I mean, you have no timeouts, is what I meant to say. You have no timeouts. But you have to be able to at least give your quarterback some sort of relaxation. Like getting out of
Yeah.
bounds. That was their big mistake there. They let Carson Beck get all amped up, and that ended up being a pick because he got super amped up, like, oh, I've got to score right now. Instead, he could have just decided to relax, throw if they had been able to get out of bounds. They should have at least ran one more play where they run an out route to the tight end, or, of course, Malachi Tony. That would have been a really good one. Have him run an out route, of course, to have
Yep.
hit him on the onside, outside, get him out of bounds, stop the clock, give Carson Beck a minute to breathe, let him calm down, collect his thoughts. But I mean, they didn't do that. They didn't really execute to the peak potential, I feel like, that they could have hit on that final drive. And then we move into Indiana, they just executed on all sides of the ball. I mean, of course, towards the end, on especially on that last drive, their defense started to wear out. But I mean, that's just a part of playing the game, getting tired, of course, playing that entire game. They played dangerous, and the only critique I have on their defense is they didn't really get after Carson Beck. But that was literally the only critique. Other than that, they played incredible. But I mean, Fernando Mendoza on the offensive side of the ball, absolutely spectacular. Of course, that 4th and 5 run broke a tackle, dove for the end zone. I mean, just put everything on the line. Exactly what he said after the game. I would die for my teammates. I mean, I think that's awesome. It reminded me of this guy back here, his first or one of his touchdowns in the 2006 national championship. Tim Tebow snapped the ball and did a similar thing where, as a rookie, ran in and scored a touchdown. It just gave me some of those flashbacks of the great, like just that great college football years of college football. I mean, it just really was a good game overall, and I'm so happy to be able to witness it.
Yep. It was definitely one of the best games we've had in a while. Unlike that Georgia and TCU game we had years back, that was a not competitive game at all.
Brutal.
I was quite disappointed to watch. But going back to the main points, Miami wasn't a disappointment really at all. Malachi Tony played his heart out. The explosive plays, tough yards, keeping drives alive, and their running back was grinding out yards all game. Even when Indiana's defense tightened up, he kept pushing and fighting for those extra yards.
He had two
And those two
touchdowns, I
were
think.
yeah, he had two touchdowns, I believe. And those two together were the spark Miami needed. They just couldn't get it done there in those key moments. And unfortunately for Carson Beck, on that interception, he thought it was man coverage, I feel like, and then that zone guy, that extra safety came in there and he didn't see him and it just happened to be
Yeah,
interceptions. It
you could
happened.
tell that that DB really tricked Carson Beck as he was when he was running. He was trying to trick him like, oh, he's got me beat, but he's not. Of course, the DB
Yeah.
knew I'm with this guy, but he tricked Carson Beck into thinking, oh, my wide receiver's got a beat on him, and when he threw it, DB turns on the wheels, gets underneath the ball, picks it off, and seals the game for Indiana.
Yep. And to top it off, here's some news from around the football world here. We need to zoom out for a minute. We've only really been focusing on this game, but one of the biggest stories is that the Dolphins hired Jeff Hafley as their new head coach, replacing McDaniel's. He had been there for quite a time, and Miami had parted ways with Mike McDaniel, and that reaction has been mixed. Some fans love the defensive direction, and others think it was a gamble. But either way, it's one of the most talked about hires of the week. And in college football, the transfer portal is still going crazy. A handful of top tier players entered the portal this week, including multiple starting caliber receivers and a couple of high profile defensive backs looking for bigger roles. And on the flip side, UNC added 8 new transfers as Bill Belichick continues reshaping that roster with NFL style discipline and depth. There's also been a lot of conversation about the officiating across the sport. As we've already mentioned, some of those poor officiating football playoff games, especially after, like I already mentioned, the plays in the college bowls and the pro matchups in the playoffs. And with that, like even an example like the Broncos interception, they quickly just went over that and didn't review it, and there's a lot of controversy around that. Fans and analysts are pushing harder than ever for expanded replay authority and more transparency from officiating crews. It's becoming to be a league-wide conversation, not just one game issues. So there's some coaching changes, portal chaos, and officiating debates that are dominating the headlines right now. And it all ties back to what we saw in the Indiana and Miami championship. Do you have any final words for us, Turner?
Yes, I do. For my SEC fans out there, I've got a couple of recruits that I want to tell you guys about for two teams, the University of Florida and the University of Georgia. The University of Georgia has just had, well, not really just, they got him this season, but he's staying recruited to them. And he is the number one prospect quarterback in the nation recruit right now who is committed to Georgia. Now, I can't remember, but there was some talk about maybe him having an injury of some sort. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to look more into it. We'll post a short about it maybe later, talking later down the line, looking into some more recruits later in the year. Of course, now that the college football season's over, we'll look into those recruiting. And then for the Florida Gators, they have a new quarterback as well coming in named Aaron Philo, who was the backup quarterback for Georgia Tech last year, who actually performed really well with his time on the field at Georgia Tech and has a promising future with the Florida Gators. But the big thing is it's going to be a battle for that position, especially in Florida, as they have so much quarterback talent heading in, especially with guys like Will Griffin, who is another recruit. He's a five-star recruit heading in. And I mean, I've also got Tramel Jones, who's the backup currently. You got to look at those three guys. You got to say, wow, there's a lot of talent here. Who's going to be our starter? So, I mean, that's going to be something we'll follow a good bit on who's going to be the starter for the University of Florida. Same thing for Georgia with that new five-star quarterback. It makes you wonder, would they step down Gunnar Stockton? I highly doubt it. I mean, of course, they trust that man a lot. And, of course, they're probably going to let um, that new five-star quarterback just learn underneath Gunnar Stockton a good bit. But that was one thing I wanted to say. And I just wanted to thank you guys for watching the video and be able to come down to RPO Radio today to listen about our recap today.
Yep, and as the NFL season concludes, the Super Bowl coming up, we'll start transitioning into free agents and drafts, and also the transfer portal in college football. So that's something you'll be seeing more as the NFL season comes to an end. But to cap it off, that will be the end of our episode of RPO Radio. Yesterday's championship game gave us controversy, heartbreak, and some incredible football. Now, and something that we haven't had in a while in the college football world. And we'll be keeping an eye on the whole entire situation there. If you enjoyed the breakdown, hit that like and subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about the officiating, the missed opportunities, and Indiana's big win. I'm Hunter, and this is my co-host Turner, and this is RPO Radio. I'll catch you next time.